This video is probably going to be offensive to some people, but for other people it might be a very refreshing eye-opener. In the last week or so, there's been an outrage that's been brought up about the rebel flag. And my own opinions are my opinions, and I feel like I should say something about it because people's attitudes are changing about the freedom and the right to express oneself. Because if it offends especially a black person, then your rights should not exist because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And you can't have equality if everybody doesn't have the same right to show and express themselves. And that is what's wrong with our country. It's because people don't get the fact that when you infringe on somebody else's right to free expression, then it's not free for anybody, because you're saying that your right should circumvent anything else that somebody else has as a right. And the Confederate battle flag is no different. Just because the black population of this country feels that it represents slavery does not give the right for them to say your right to express that and to show that in public is not allowed. It shouldn't be acceptable. It shouldn't be permitted. Because, see, then you're infringing on the constitutional right of someone else to expression. And that's called freedom of speech. And it's also a part of what was called, I don't know if anybody still remembers it, the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is a part of the United States Constitution. The United States Constitution was, for some 200 years, our actual document that our country upheld. It stood for, it stood by, and the one thing it said is that every person has the right to express themselves, to have full liberty and freedom from tyranny, freedom from harassment. And that's totally gone. In this country today, the overview of this country is we have a black president, we have power as far as the black people, and now because of what's going on with police shooting blacks, even though it may not be an actual single type of event, which means the police kill everybody. They shoot everybody. They shoot whites. They shoot Mexicans. Everyone. But because it's happening, they're singling out these events where a black man is shot down by a police officer, and they're saying, no, you're a racist. You're a bigot. That's the one attitude that is said any time something happens that a black person doesn't agree with. What do they tell you? You're a racist. Why am I racist? Well, you believe in the Confederate battle flag, or you've got it on your car, or you've got a flag on your flagpole. So what? Everybody has the right to express themselves. Everybody. That means you may not agree with it, but under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, everybody has the same right to express themselves. And that means you haven't the right to say that because it makes you feel offensive, then nobody else should be allowed to show it either. Because I don't agree and I don't have the same viewpoints as somebody else. But the attitude now of anybody and everybody in this country is this. If somebody who is black does not agree with what you're doing, then you don't have the right to do that anymore. Yeah, that's exactly what's going on in this country. And that is why everything is under attack. Everything against every other person who is not a black person who has their opinion about something that's going on. That means you don't have the right to do that because they say it's wrong or it's not acceptable or it's offensive to them in some way or another. But if you flip the coin around, you don't see that same thing against black people anymore. they can do whatever they want to, and nobody does nothing. And I say that's just upside down. That's just totally screwed up, because that's not freedom. If they can be subjecting us and we be subjected, then where is the fairness of that to anybody? And I say this: if you think a person is a racist or a bigot or whatever word they use because they have a difference of opinion about something that you don't agree with, then that's your problem. You have to deal with that. That doesn't give you the right to subjugate somebody else to accepting that attitude just because you don't think it's right. Everybody has the right to expression. That's what the United States Constitution was founded on. Freedom, liberty. These words don't even compute anymore. People's whole attitude, and I'm sure you've heard this term many times, it's called the me generation. Now what that is, that means everything centers around you. It doesn't center around anybody else. There used to be a thing in this country, it was called tolerance. That meant everybody accepted everybody else, no matter what they believed in. It's gone. All you have to do is look at it right now in this country, and you know there is no tolerance, because all attitudes, all viewpoints are for one viewpoint and not for everything around them. That's why the government's in an uproar. That's why the police are under attack for things that they have a sworn duty to uphold, which is to protect those who are innocent, those who are victims. But the attitude is gone to believe that if we're going to get along with each other, everybody has to be able to accept whatever they believe in. Freedom not only represents a person's individual rights to expression, but it also includes religious belief. Now, I don't for 1 second say that this attack that you've been seeing on television and the media against Christians, just because of the fact that Muslims feel that their religion is more important, there's no way you can justify that kind of attack by the media and by everybody. You know, when Bush went on television after 9/11, he said this: we don't want to see people ostracizing Muslims. We don't want to see people ostracizing Islamics, the Jewish community, or any religion, because of what happened on the hijacking of those 3 airliners. Today, the attitude is the Muslims are the victims, and therefore every other religion is the actual criminal. Why? Because they don't believe what the Muslims believe in. So everybody else is now intolerable towards a religion that has pretty much always been isolated and also unheard of. Islam was never even heard of 30 years ago. In the 80s, you never even heard of it. Nobody knew what it was. And now it's not only heard, but it's subjugated on people. You must accept this attitude. You must accept this religious belief. Why? Because if you don't accept it, you're going to offend the Muslim community, and you're going to make them feel unwelcome. You're going to make them feel bad. So, you know, it's exactly on another level of consciousness. This gays in the 80s were laughed at, and now they don't laugh anymore because they have reached a opinion of importance where not only do you have to accept them, but the religious belief itself has to accept the way they live too, even if it's against what their beliefs are. And if that's not a topsy-turvy society we live in, then you're still living in the me generation, which means I don't care what happens around me as long as I'm in my own little cubicle. I'm in my own bubble. I don't care what happens as long as I have what I've got. And pretty much that is society today. Everybody is in their own little world, and as long as nobody else messes around with it, they're happy. I don't care what you do. I've got my iPhone. I've got this. I've got that. I'm happy. Don't bother me. And that's what society is. It's about me, myself, and I. And so when they finally wake up out of their bubble and they see, whoa, what has happened? It's too late to do anything about it now. But I just cannot understand this about our society. If you're rational and you have a conscience and you have free thought, then why do we have problems dealing with each other? Why can't people be tolerant and say, if you want to believe this, fine, but don't force me to accept it. If you don't like the Confederate flag, fine, that's your opinion, but that doesn't mean that I have to say, hey, I don't agree either. Everybody should have the same choice and the same right to say, I either agree or I don't agree. Not say to that person or this person, that offends me. You're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to say anything because I've said you're not going to say it. Does that sound like Barack Obama to you? It sure sounds like it to me. His wife gets on television and tells these children in our school systems, you're not going to eat that anymore because that's not good for you, so I'm just going to take it away from you. I'm not going to let you eat that anymore. That's subjugation. More importantly, that's socialism. And folks, in a nutshell, this is our world today. That's what we're living in today. And if it's ever going to get any better, then something has to change. And it cannot continue on the way it is with people saying to some other person, you got to accept my feelings because that's the way it is. If you're going to have uniformity, if you're going to have equality, everybody has to be able to have the freedom of choice and the freedom of expression and the freedom to say and do what they want and not have somebody else say to them, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that because I said so. And that, to me, is why our country is falling apart at the seams. Laws and rules have always existed for the good of everybody. If you're going to give some people that advantage of saying you don't have to conform with these things, then the law has nothing to hold itself up with because you're not making everybody accept it and follow it. And our law of this country from the beginning of its inception has been our Constitution. And our Constitution is being shredded, burnt, crumbled, incinerated right in front of our faces. And nobody seems to care. Nobody does care anymore about this country. And if we're going to care, something has to change. And it has to be for the good of everybody and not just some. And I wish the President of the United States could hear this video, because if he did hear that what he is doing and what he is conspiring to do in inciting these kinds of outbursts and these riots and all the rest of it that's been happening the past year, then he'd maybe get a clue that you have to have tolerance. And that means that everybody should have the right to expression. Otherwise, nobody is free. And I think that's what the Confederate battle flag was all about. Everybody keeps saying the Confederate battle flag is hatred, it's slavery. That is your perception. That is not historical fact. The Confederate battle flag even did not have anything to do with slavery during the Civil War. And it's funny, in Georgia, we had the Confederate battle flag on our state flag for 40 years. Thank you.